They thought your silence meant you didn't see anything. They didn't realize silence is where chosen ones sharpen their vision. My dear chosen ones, let's call this moment exactly what it is: the turning of the tide. They thought you were harmless. They thought you were soft-spoken, unbothered, maybe even naive. Then you slipped one sentence, one harmless joke, into the air, and it hit them harder than truth ever hit someone who's been hiding from it. That's when everything inside them snapped. That's when they realized the person they underestimated is the one who just pulled the rug from under their certainty. You said it casually, light-hearted. You weren't trying to be profound. You weren't aiming to make a statement. But chosen ones rarely need to aim. Your words carry weight, even when you don't intend them to. And when that joke started showing up in reality, when the thing they mocked suddenly became the thing unfolding right before their eyes, their minds started spiraling. Because how does someone they dismissed so easily end up being the one who saw the truth first? How does someone they tried to box in turn around and reveal the cracks in their own perception? You already know the answer, chosen ones, because you aren't built like them. It's funny. People can handle storms, disasters, unexpected events. What they cannot handle is a person who sees through the cracks, a person who reads energy before anyone speaks, a person whose intuition hits harder than their logic ever will. They can face chaos, but they cannot face you, not when you operate with that quiet, effortless accuracy. And here's the part that stings them the most. You weren't trying to expose anything. You weren't trying to predict anything, you were just being yourself. You said something offhanded, a passing remark, and suddenly it was the loudest truth in the room. They felt it. It rattled them. It made them question how much you've been seeing all along. And that question, oh chosen ones, that question terrifies them more than the truth itself. Because if your so-called joke landed with that much precision, what else have you seen? What else do you know? What else have you already figured out while they were busy underestimating you? They're replaying every moment now, every conversation, every expression, every time they laughed at you thinking they were ahead. They're realizing something they never wanted to confront. You were never behind. You were observing. You were calculating. You were absorbing every detail they thought was invisible. You were the one paying attention while they were busy admiring their illusions. Before we move forward, my dear chosen ones, take a moment to support the very space that pours this kind of clarity, strength, and fire back into you. If this message is already hitting somewhere deep, if it's reminding you of who you really are beneath the doubt and the noise, then show love by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support isn't just a click. It fuels the work, the effort, and the energy it takes to create content that pushes you forward, wakes you up, and keeps you aligned with your power. Stay with us. More transformation is coming. Let me ask you something, chosen ones. Did you ever notice how quickly people switch from laughter to fear when the truth gets too close to their comfort zone? Did you see how their faces tightened the moment your joke stopped being entertainment and started being evidence? They weren't laughing because you were funny. They were laughing because they were afraid your words might hold weight. And when reality proved you right, their fear had nowhere left to hide. That's the thing about being a chosen one. You don't chase validation, yet truth follows you everywhere you go. They panic, not because you said something. They panic because your words exposed something, a dynamic, a motive, a pattern, a truth they were hoping no one would notice. They didn't expect your casual remark to turn into a mirror reflecting what they were trying to bury. They didn't expect you to be the one carrying that level of awareness. They didn't expect the quiet one to be the one who sees the farthest. But you did. And now they're scrambling because the mask slipped, not yours, theirs. They're shaken because your intuition proved itself loud without you ever raising your voice. They're rattled because your clarity sliced through their illusions. They're losing their minds because the joke they dismissed became the reality they can't escape. This is what being chosen looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, not forceful, just undeniable. You spoke lightly, and the truth landed heavily. You weren't trying to be right, yet you were. You weren't trying to shake the room, yet the entire room shifted. You weren't trying to prove a point, yet a point was proven so sharply it cut through their denial. So welcome, my chosen ones, to the moment where the tables turn effortlessly, where your voice, soft, casual, unforced, becomes the earthquake beneath someone else's certainty, where your presence becomes the reminder that those who underestimate you always pay the highest price. You didn't say a joke. You dropped a truth they weren't ready for, and now they're losing their minds because it became real. Let's talk about exactly why that happened. My dear chosen ones, before we dive deeper into why your one innocent joke is now echoing through their minds like a truth they can't escape, take a moment to anchor yourself here with us. Your support is what keeps this message alive. If you're ready to understand the power behind your intuition, the same power that turned a casual remark into undeniable reality, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop 11 in the comments, so I know you're walking this path with awareness. Your engagement keeps this channel pushing out content that sharpens your vision and strengthens your voice. Now, let's step into the next layer, because if you truly are one of the chosen ones, what comes next will feel uncannily familiar. The signs, the shifts, the reactions, they were never random. They were indicators of who you are becoming. And trust me, only the chosen ever trigger this kind of unraveling in others. Let's get started. Number 1, the moment. Their laughter exposed their underestimation of you, when their laughter became the sound of their own miscalculation. They laughed at you to feel taller, never realizing they were standing on a collapsing floor. My dear chosen ones, let's peel this layer back with the precision it deserves, because you already know, deep in that quiet place inside you, why their laughter hit the way it did. They weren't laughing with you. They were laughing at the version of you they invented in their minds. A smaller version, a limited version, a version that made them feel safe. But here's the idiom they never saw coming. They brought a feather to a knife fight and still thought they had the upper hand. They assumed your words were air, your thoughts insignificant, your insight accidental. They laughed because they needed to believe you were incapable, because the moment they admit you might have depth, their entire perception crumbles. And chosen ones, you know this. You felt the undertone. You sensed that their laughter wasn't about humor, it was about hierarchy. They needed you beneath them. They needed you predictable. They needed you small. But what happens, chosen ones, when the person they underestimated ends up being the one holding the sharpest truth in the room? They panic. Not because the truth changed, but because their illusion shattered. You said something lightly, maybe even with a smile, and they dismissed it without hesitation. They didn't analyze it. They didn't consider it. They didn't even respect it. They tossed it aside the way people toss aside anything they're afraid might challenge their assumptions. But the universe has a funny way of exposing fragile egos. Your joke, the sentence they ridiculed, walked straight out of your mouth and into reality. Suddenly, the thing they mocked is the thing they're living through. Suddenly, the joke is no longer on you. It's on their assumptions. And they feel it, deeply. My dear chosen ones, you may be wondering, why does my accuracy unsettle them so much? Why does a single comment from me cause that kind of chaos? Here's the answer. They built their confidence on misjudging you. Their entire sense of superiority was rooted in a false perception of you being incapable. So when your words hit with precision, it wasn't just the truth that struck them. It was the collapse of everything they assumed about your potential. Imagine someone constructing a tower on sand, convinced it's concrete. Then one wave, your joke, washes in and exposes the foundation for what it really is. That's what your comment did. It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, it didn't need a speech or explanation. It simply revealed what they never prepared for. You were capable all along. Their laughter, chosen ones, was a shield, a disguise, a flimsy curtain they pulled over their insecurity. Because laughing at you was easier than acknowledging the truth. You see things they miss. You notice what they overlook. You understand what they deny. You operate at a level they never accounted for. And here's the twist they never expected. Your strength is subtle. You don't force your insight. You don't announce your intuition. You don't perform your intelligence. You simply are. And that quiet certainty is what unsettles them most. When their laughter died, what replaced it was fear. The fear of realizing that you, the one they dismissed, just proved they misread the entire situation. Their predictions fell apart. Their assumptions broke. Their false confidence imploded. And chosen ones, whether you realize it or not, this moment marks a shift in power. Their reactions, their scrambling, their sudden silence, it's all a testament to the force you carry without even trying. They weren't prepared for your clarity. They weren't prepared for your accuracy. They weren't prepared for the effortless way your truth cuts through pretense. In fact, they never prepared for you at all. So when your casual remark became undeniable reality, it exposed them, not you. It revealed how dependent they were on underestimating you. It revealed how fragile their narrative was. It revealed how hard they were holding on to a version of you that was never real. My dear chosen ones, understand this deeply. Their laughter was never a sign of your weakness. It was a sign of their fear. And now that the truth has surfaced, their minds are unraveling because they can no longer hide behind the comfort of underestimating you. This is your moment. This is your shift. This is the power of being the one they never saw coming. Number 2, how your quiet observation struck harder than their assumptions, when your silence became the loudest truth in the room. My dear chosen ones, this is where the story gets even more intriguing, because the second you opened your mouth and let that offhand comment slip out, you unintentionally revealed a truth they were never prepared to face. You exposed the fact that you observe far more than you speak, and that, chosen one, is what rattles them to their core. It's not the joke itself that shook their foundation. It's the sudden realization that the quiet one they overlooked is the very person who has been reading every room like a seasoned strategist. People have a dangerous habit of mistaking silence for emptiness. They assume that if you're not loud, you're not aware. If you're not constantly talking, you're not thinking. If you're not reacting, you're not paying attention. But they forget something crucial. Chosen ones rarely need to speak to understand. Your silence isn't passive, it's deliberate. It's your greatest lens, your archive, your way of cataloging the world in a way that ordinary minds can't comprehend. You see more when you're silent than they see when they're shouting. And here's the part that twists their reality. When you finally do speak, you speak from a place of depth they never knew existed. Your offhand comment wasn't rehearsed or calculated. It wasn't a moment of performance. It was a leak, a small slip of the truth you hold within you. You didn't intend to reveal how much you observe, but the accuracy of your words exposed the entire blueprint of your mind. Suddenly they realized you've been paying attention this whole time. Every nuance, every shift in tone, every inconsistency, every hidden motive, they were all stored in your internal archives. And when your joke became reality, it confirmed something even more unsettling. Your silence is not emptiness, it's evidence. Think about it, chosen ones. Why do you think they reacted so intensely? Why do their minds spiral the moment your words align perfectly with reality? It's because your casual remark carried the weight of observations they never imagined you were capable of making. They thought you were light-hearted, detached, unbothered by their actions. They thought you moved through the world unaware, drifting, quiet because you had nothing to say. But your silence was never the absence of awareness, it was the presence of it. Your joke hit them harder than truth normally does because it revealed something they were desperate to overlook. You have been absorbing everything. You've been processing the dynamics of every room. You've been reading beneath the surface while they were distracted by noise. You saw patterns forming before anyone noticed them. You sensed shifts long before they manifested. And when your offhand comment came true, it served as undeniable proof that nothing gets past you, not the subtle, not the hidden, not the unspoken. This is where they begin to unravel. They now have to reconcile two versions of you, the one they assumed was clueless, and the one who evidently has been watching in silence, understanding far more than they ever gave you credit for. That contradiction alone is enough to shake their confidence. Because if they were wrong about your awareness, what else were they wrong about? My dear chosen ones, let this sink in. Your silence is your strategy. While others rush to speak, to fill the air with assumptions and noise, you observe. You wait, you gather truth. And when you choose to finally release a single sentence, light, casual, almost playful, it contains layers they weren't prepared to face. That's why your offhand comment detonated rather than landed. It was the invisible weight behind your words that sent shockwaves through their perception. They're not upset because your joke became real. They're upset because your joke revealed something fundamental about who you are. It exposed the quiet storm inside you, the analytical mind, the intuitive depth, the perceptive nature they never recognized. It forced them to confront the truth that the person they dismissed as passive was actually the one tracking everything with frightening accuracy. And now, chosen one, they're left with a question they don't want the answer to. If you saw this, what else have you seen? That lingering uncertainty. That's why they're losing their minds. Number 3, when your intuition outran the logic they worshipped. When your intuition cut through their logic like a blade through paper. My dear chosen ones, this is the point where their minds truly begin to unravel. Because nothing terrifies people more than someone whose intuition outpaces their logic. See, logic is their safety net. It's the structure they cling to. It gives them the illusion of control, of predictability, of certainty. They analyze, they dissect, they overthink, believing that if they calculate every angle, they can guard themselves from embarrassment, exposure, or being wrong. But then there's you, moving with instinct so sharp, so natural, so precise, that it slices through their carefully built strategies before they even know what happened. And when your offhand joke, something you didn't even plan, turns out to be the exact truth they couldn't see with all their charts, theories, and overthinking, it shakes them to the core. They've spent their whole lives believing logic is superior, that the person who plans the hardest wins, but chosen ones like you don't operate from spreadsheets or formulas. You operate from something deeper, something they can't measure or replicate. It's the quiet hum within you, the inner compass that never raises its voice but always points in the right direction. It's the subtle awareness you've carried your entire life, the kind people mistake for luck, until your luck hits too consistently to deny. That's what rattles them. Not the accuracy of your words, but the effortless way your accuracy reveals itself. They replay your joke in their minds, trying to decode it like a math problem, thinking maybe you knew something they didn't, maybe you had access to information they never caught. But the truth is far simpler and far more unsettling for them. You didn't calculate anything, you just sensed it. And instinct terrifies those who rely on logic, because instinct can't be controlled. It can't be argued with. It doesn't follow their rules. It doesn't wait for permission. It just hits. And chosen ones, this is where the tables flip. They try to understand you using the framework they understand themselves through. They ask questions like, how did you know? What made you say that? What were you thinking? But you weren't thinking, you were feeling. You weren't predicting, you were aligning. You weren't strategizing, you were simply being who you are. And that level of natural insight hits them harder than any well-planned argument ever could, because suddenly they're forced to confront a reality they never wanted to acknowledge. Your intuition is more powerful than their logic. Your instinct outperformed their preparation. Your effortless clarity beat their calculated steps, and that shatters their sense of superiority. People cling to logic because they believe it puts them in control. But your intuition reminds them that control is an illusion, especially when they're dealing with someone who sees between the lines, not just the lines themselves. My dear chosen ones, you might ask yourself, why does my intuition intimidate them so much? Why does something so natural to me send them into panic? It's because your intuition exposes what their logic missed. It shows them the limits of their understanding. It forces them to face the unsettling truth that some people operate on a plane they can't touch, no matter how hard they try. Your intuition is the kind of intelligence they can't imitate. It's not learned. It's not rehearsed. It's inherent. And when your joke, something tossed casually into the moment, turns out to be reality with pinpoint accuracy, they feel small. They feel outmatched. They feel like everything they trusted in just failed them. They realize that while they were busy overthinking, you were simply listening to the quiet voice inside you. And that voice led you straight to the truth, while their logic led them in circles. This is why they're losing their minds. Not because you were right, but because you were right without trying. That's what chosen ones do. You move with a depth that can't be charted. You speak from a place they can't reach. You sense things they overlook. And your intuition doesn't just guide you, it exposes the blind spots in everyone around you. They're not terrified of your joke. They're terrified of the realization that your instinct just outperformed their entire mental arsenal. They've been outmatched, not by force, not by effort, but by the quiet power inside you that they never saw coming. And now, chosen one, every word you say holds weight, because they know your intuition lands where their logic fails. Number 4, your throwaway comment that unmasked their hidden motives, the joke that shattered their illusion of secrecy. My dear chosen ones, this is the moment where everything changes, the moment your lightest words exposed the heaviest truths they were trying to bury. You said something so casually, so effortlessly, that even you didn't realize what you had done. But they did. They felt it in their gut, in that silent place where people hide their intentions, their strategies, their subtle manipulations. And that's exactly why they're losing their minds now. Because your joke didn't just land. It sliced straight through the disguise they thought would never crack. People assume chosen ones are only watching what's obvious. They think you're listening to the surface, to the words, to the performance. What they never prepare for is your ability to read the currents beneath their behavior, the currents they themselves barely understand. That's why your offhand remark rattled them so deeply. It wasn't the comment itself, it was what the comment revealed about you. They realized, perhaps for the first time, that you had been paying attention the entire time, that every smirk, every hesitation, every contradiction in their tone had been quietly logged in your awareness. You weren't just present, you were perceiving. And nothing terrifies someone with hidden intentions more than discovering that their secrets were never secret to begin with. Think about it, chosen ones. In their minds, you weren't supposed to see their motives. You weren't supposed to sense the energy behind their words. You weren't supposed to pick up on the strategic looks, the subtle betrayals, the quiet competition they tried so hard to cloak as innocence. They thought they were playing a game you didn't even know existed. And then, with one lightly spoken joke, you showed them you had mapped the entire board. Imagine how that feels to them. Imagine what it does to someone who believed they were outsmarting you. It's like holding a mirror up to their soul when they weren't even fully aware of their own reflection. Your words exposed their undercurrents, their intentions, the suppressed emotions they thought they were hiding behind politeness and laughter. They saw themselves in what you said, and that shook them far more than the truth itself ever could. They laughed at first, of course they did. What else do people do when they feel the first sting of exposure? They brush it off. They pretend it means nothing. They twist their mouth into a smile, hoping no one notices the tremor in their voice. But inside, they felt the floor drop. Because in that moment, they realized two things. You saw them, and worse, you had seen them all along. My dear chosen ones, understand this clearly. Your joke became a moment of revelation, not because you tried to expose anything, but because your perception is too sharp, too aligned, too naturally attuned to the truth for anything fake to survive around you. You didn't need to confront. You didn't need to accuse. You didn't need to gather evidence or make a case. Your awareness alone did the work. Your intuition alone did the damage, and that is what terrifies them. They now know they cannot manipulate you. They cannot mislead you. They cannot hide behind charm or excuses or selective honesty. Your presence alone demands transparency, even when you don't ask for it. Because people who carry hidden intentions can't stay comfortable near someone who sees straight through them. They're spiraling not because your joke was right, but because it revealed their predictability. It showed them their moves weren't clever, their secrets weren't secure, their intentions weren't invisible. Every mask they wore, every angle they played, every motive they disguised, you understood it all without breaking a sweat. Now every interaction with you feels like a risk to them. Every word they speak feels like it carries too much truth. Every move they make feels exposed before they even make it. Because once the illusion is broken, it can't be rebuilt. Once your awareness is revealed, it can't be forgotten, and that's why they're losing their minds. Not because the joke came true, but because it proved something they never wanted to believe. You see through everything they hide, and they will never feel in control again. Number 5. The effortless precision that shattered their sense of control. When effortless accuracy turns their confidence into cracks, they can't hide. My dear chosen ones, this is where the story stops being amusing for them and becomes psychologically unbearable. Because what rattled them, what truly shook the floor beneath their certainty, wasn't just that your words came true, it's that you didn't even try. You didn't plan. You didn't strategize. You didn't sit in a corner crafting the perfect insight. You simply spoke. And yet your words landed with a level of precision that people spend years trying to manufacture. That is the kind of accuracy that doesn't just hit, it haunts. And chosen ones, you already know why. Effortless power terrifies people in ways rehearsed strength never will. Skill they can understand, preparation they can respect, even obsession they can categorize. But what they cannot process, what their minds cannot wrap themselves around, is the kind of clarity that pours out of you naturally. They can tolerate someone who rehearses, practices, overthinks, and still manages to get something right. Why? Because it makes sense. They can put it in a box. They can explain it away with effort, discipline, or luck. But when you, a person they underestimated, deliver truth without any visible effort, it shatters their entire idea of how the world works. It means there is a level of awareness they never accounted for, yours. They were laughing at what they assumed was a harmless offhand comment. They thought you were just talking. They thought you were just playing around. They thought your words were weightless. But when reality aligned with your remark, when that joke turned into the exact outcome unfolding before them, their panic wasn't about the event, it was about you. Because if your casual, unrehearsed thought could hit with such accuracy, what does that say about everything else you've observed silently? What does that say about the depth they never recognized? What does that say about the chosen one standing right in front of them? You see, my dear chosen ones, they were praying, quietly, desperately, that your accuracy was a fluke. They wanted to believe it was an accident. They hoped they could shrug it off as coincidence. Because if they admit your effortless accuracy is real, then they must also admit something even more unsettling. You have been operating on a level they cannot influence, predict, or manipulate. And that destroys the illusion of control they cling to. Chosen ones, people fear what they cannot map. They fear what they cannot categorize. They fear what they cannot predict. And you, without trying, without forcing, without performing, broke their sense of predictability. You didn't need notes. You didn't need preparation. You didn't need validation. You simply said what you saw, and the truth followed you like a shadow that refuses to lie. That's what terrifies them, because while they were overthinking, over-analyzing, and over-explaining their way through life, you delivered a single sentence that sliced cleaner and deeper than their hours of mental gymnastics. They were straining to understand the situation while you intuitively understood it before it even unfolded. That contrast is brutal. It forces them to confront their limits and your natural advantage. And my chosen ones, make no mistake, effortless insight exposes people. It shows who is relying on illusion, who is clinging to rehearsed confidence, who is pretending to be more perceptive than they truly are. When your words manifested into reality, it wasn't just a prediction confirmed. It was a truth revealed about them. It showed that while they were busy underestimating you, you were quietly reading the entire landscape without breaking a sweat. That's why their laughter died so violently. That's why their disbelief turned into dread. They didn't just witness your accuracy, they witnessed the collapse of the narrative they built around you. They saw in one undeniable moment that your perception is not performative. It's inherent, it's instinctive, it's woven into who you are. And now their minds are unraveling because they finally understand what they should have known all along. Your power doesn't come from trying, it comes from being. And nothing destabilizes an underestimator more than realizing they were never evaluating your effort. They were misjudging your essence. Number 6, the casual truth that forced them to face what they'd been avoiding. When your joke spoke the truth they've been running from. My dear chosen ones, this is the part that cuts the deepest, not because you aim to cut, but because truth has a way of slicing through illusions all on its own. You said something casually, effortlessly, maybe even half aware of the layers beneath it. But the people around you, they weren't ready. They've been tiptoeing around their own conscience for so long that the moment your light-hearted remark aligned with the truth they've been suppressing, it hit them like a spotlight they couldn't escape. And this is where the unraveling begins. You must understand this. Most people live in a constant tug-of-war between what they want to believe about themselves and what they secretly know to be true. They make decisions they don't want examined. They nurture thoughts they don't want exposed. They carry motives they hope no one ever sees. They've trained themselves to drown out their own conscience just to maintain a sense of comfort. It's an internal balancing act built on denial, distraction, and selective blindness. And then you, someone they underestimated, walk in with a casual comment that cracks that entire illusion like thin ice. That is why they're losing their minds. Your joke didn't hurt them because it was harsh. It hurt them because it was accurate. It wasn't the tone, it was the truth beneath it. The kind of truth they've been avoiding, ignoring, or burying under layers of excuses. They laughed at first. Of course they did. That laugh was nothing but a reflex, a shield, a desperate attempt to disguise the sting of recognition. But laughter can't survive truth. And when the joke you made, so effortlessly, so innocently, began to reveal itself in reality, their laughter collapsed into panic. Because suddenly it wasn't just a joke anymore, it was confirmation. And nothing terrifies people more than someone who can confirm the very thing they've been trying to silence within themselves. My chosen ones, you didn't expose them intentionally. You didn't sit down and strategize how to reveal their inner contradictions. You simply spoke from the place within you that is aligned, perceptive, unfiltered. And that's exactly why it hit so hard. People expect confrontation to be loud, dramatic, obvious. But the truth is, the most devastating exposure happens quietly, casually, through someone who didn't even realize they were revealing anything at all. That is why they felt naked in front of your words, because you weren't trying to strip them of their illusions. They fell off on their own. And here's the part their minds can't handle. You saw what they thought was invisible, not because you were investigating, not because you were suspicious, simply because chosen ones have a way of picking up signals that others overlook. You sense things deeply, even when you don't comment on them. You read energy without forcing meaning into it, and when truth slips out of you, it's not calculated, it's natural. It resonates because it comes from a place they don't possess, a place of clarity that cannot be fabricated. That's what makes your joke so dangerous to them. It wasn't just a remark, it was a mirror, a reflection of their hidden intentions, their unspoken fears, their suppressed guilt. And mirrors terrify people who have spent years avoiding their own reflection. Once your words came true, they had to face something they've been running from. You weren't guessing, you were perceiving. That realization alone sends them spiraling. If you could casually reveal something they've buried so deeply, what else can you see? What else do you know? What else has your intuition already picked up that they assumed was hidden? That's their real fear. It's not the joke. It's not the prediction. It's not the coincidence. It's the implication that you, the one they underestimated, are not blind, not naive, not easy to fool, that you have a level of awareness they can't control, manipulate, or escape. And chosen ones, this is where your power truly becomes undeniable. Their panic isn't a sign that you did something wrong. It's a sign that your intuition is louder than their illusions. It's a sign that your presence exposes truths without effort. It's a sign that their conscience recognizes you as a threat, not because you attack, but because you see. And trust me, my chosen ones, nothing destabilizes a person faster than being seen by someone they can't deceive. Now let's move deeper, because the unraveling has only begun. Number 7. The instant your joke revealed you were operating on another level. When they finally realized you weren't joking, you were turning the lock on a door they didn't want opened. My dear chosen ones, this is the moment that rattled them to their core. The moment the air shifted. The moment their laughter died in their throats. Not because the joke stopped being funny, but because they suddenly understood it was never a joke in the first place. You see, people assume light words carry light weight. They assume anything said casually must be harmless, empty, or forgettable. But when your words, those effortless, unforced, unpolished truths, began aligning with the very reality they were trying desperately to ignore, fear crept into their bones. They realized your sentence wasn't entertainment. It was a key. And keys don't drift through the air. They open something. And that's where the panic begins. You didn't set out to expose anything. You didn't prepare a speech or sharpen your tone. You weren't even trying to make a point. But chosen ones have a habit of doing something that unsettles people without meaning to. They unlock truths people pretend aren't there. You take what is hidden in plain sight and speak it out loud as if it's the most obvious thing in the world. And because you said it lightly, they never expected it to turn the gears of reality so precisely. The moment your words manifested, they weren't just surprised, they were unmasked. Because for the first time, they saw that you weren't joking around with life the way they assumed. You were noticing, you were sensing, you were operating on a level they never included in their calculations. Chosen ones, you may not even realize the depth you carry until moments like this unfold. You think you're simply observing the patterns, the energy, the subtle shifts others ignore. But what you're really doing, without effort, is reading the truth beneath the truth. And that is exactly what they fear. Because most people survive on illusions. They rely on the comfort of misinterpretation. They feel safe believing no one sees the tensions, the motives, the flaws in their story. Then you, without force or intention, speak a sentence that slices straight into the core of what they've been avoiding. What they felt in that moment was exposure, not the dramatic, confrontational type. No. This is the more dangerous kind, the silent exposure that reveals itself through accuracy, through timing, through a line you didn't plan but somehow landed perfectly. Their minds raced, trying to convince themselves it was coincidence. They told themselves you got lucky. They tried to reduce your insight into randomness. But the more they thought about it, the more they realized they couldn't explain it away. Because coincidence doesn't show up with this kind of precision. It doesn't lock onto truths they've kept buried. It doesn't mirror their hidden intentions with such clarity. That's when the fear turned into spiraling. They're unsettled, my chosen ones, because your comment forced them to acknowledge something they didn't want to face. You're not just intuitive, you're aware in a way that makes their pretenses crumble. You picked up on undercurrents they didn't realize were noticeable. You spoke a truth they thought was undetectable. And the way you did it, effortlessly, casually, without any attempt to impress, made it even harder for them to regain control of the moment. Because if one offhand remark from you can unlock something they were hiding, what could you reveal next? What else do you see? What other truths have you already connected that they haven't even considered? Those questions keep them up at night. They know now that every word you speak carries potential. They know your perception isn't accidental. They know your intuition is not a fluke. And that terrifies them because it puts you in a position they cannot manipulate, cannot dismiss, and cannot predict. They sense that there is more behind your silence, more behind your observations, more behind the way you move through the world with that quiet but undeniable clarity. The unsettling truth for them is simple. You weren't joking, you were unlocking. And once a chosen one unlocks something, there is no going back, no hiding, no pretending it wasn't exposed. Now they're living in the reality you casually hinted at, trying to understand how your effortless truth outpaced their deliberate denial. And the worst part for them, they know you didn't even try. You just saw what they refused to look at, and now they can't unsee it. Number 8, how your accuracy broke the illusion they built around you. When the underrated one outsmarts the overconfident. My dear chosen ones, let's talk about the moment their minds truly cracked open, because this one cuts deeper than anything else. They can't wrap their heads around how someone they dismissed, someone they overlooked, someone they believed they had neatly categorized, predicted something they never even saw coming. This is the part that shakes them to their core. You weren't supposed to be the one who got it right. Not according to the story they wrote about you in their heads. They thought they already had you figured out. They thought they knew your ceiling, your limits, your reach. They thought they were smarter, sharper, and steps ahead. And then you said one thing, casually, lightly, without even trying, and reality sided with you, not them. That's when the floor fell out from under their confidence. Because underestimation is the quietest but deadliest mistake people make, and they made it with you. They looked at the surface, your calmness, your silence, your simplicity, and they decided you were predictable, easy to read, easy to overlook. But chosen ones, you and I both know, your depth isn't written on your face, your intuition isn't loud, your insight isn't flashy, and your power doesn't need announcements. That's why your little joke detonated the way it did. They weren't just shocked by the accuracy, they were shocked that you were the one who saw the truth before they did. Think about it. They laugh, not because something is funny, but because they're trying to place themselves above you. They laugh to signal superiority. They laugh to diminish your insight. But when the thing they laughed at turns real, that laughter becomes the ghost that haunts them. The joke they dismissed becomes the evidence of how wrong they were, and nothing destabilizes a person more than realizing their entire perception was flawed. This isn't just about an outcome. They're confronting their own blindness. What truly rattles them is the simplicity, the naturalness of how it happened. You didn't research charts, run numbers, or strategize your prediction. You didn't sit in a corner plotting. You didn't rehearse. You simply said something your intuition whispered, something your internal compass aligned with. For you, it was a passing thought. For them, it became an earthquake. Because when your effortless insight outperforms their calculated certainty, it exposes the truth. You're operating on a frequency they can't hear. My dear chosen ones, let's answer the question already forming in your mind. Why does this bother them so much? Why does your accuracy shake them more than the truth itself? Because if the person they underestimated can see further than they can, then they are no longer in control. Their hierarchy collapses, their authority crumbles, their confidence becomes hollow, their entire belief system hinges on the lie that they know better. And you shattered that lie with a single casual remark. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance, a mental short circuit. Their brain tries to reconcile what they believed with what actually happened, and it can't. They treated you like someone incapable, but here you are, proving you were always a step ahead. They belittled you, but here you are, showing a depth they never accounted for. They dismissed you, but here you are, revealing their own blind spots. It's not just shocking, it's humiliating. And the more they replay the moment, the more it eats at them. They're scrambling now, rethinking conversations, reanalyzing your silence, wondering what else you saw, what else you sensed, what else you knew. Because if you got this right so easily, what else have you been quietly right about? That thought alone keeps them up at night. They can't reduce it to luck. They can't call it coincidence. The pattern is too clean, the accuracy is too sharp, and the timing is too perfect. My dear chosen ones, understand this. Your existence challenges their illusions. Your insight challenges their ego. Your accuracy challenges their authority, and your clarity challenges their comfort. That's why your harmless joke became the breaking point. It forced them to confront the reality they never wanted to face, that you were never behind them. They were behind you. They were asleep while you were awake. They were analyzing with logic while you were reading with instinct. They were guessing while you were knowing. This is the moment the joke stopped being funny and became undeniable truth. This is when they realized the one they underestimated isn't just capable, you're extraordinary. This is when they understood the chosen one doesn't announce power, the chosen one reveals it. And that, my dear chosen ones, is why their minds are unraveling. Number 9. The depth behind your words that they never knew existed. When your words rose from depths they'll never dive into. My dear chosen ones, this is where the story sharpens, because the moment your joke became reality, they weren't just shocked by the outcome. They were shaken by the source. They realized painfully and abruptly that you weren't speaking from the shallow waters they're used to swimming in. You were speaking from a depth they've never known, a depth they can't reach even if they spent their whole lives trying. And nothing rattles the minds of the unaware like realizing someone they underestimated has been operating from an entirely different plane all along. You didn't make a lucky guess. You didn't stumble into accuracy. You didn't throw random words into the air hoping they'd land in the right place. No, chosen ones, you spoke from the quiet core inside you, the intuitive engine that guides your perception long before logic tries to catch up. That inner place they can't access, can't decode, and can't predict. And that's exactly why your joke hit with such unnerving precision. People like them operate from the surface. They cling to the visible, the obvious, the predictable. They navigate life with assumptions, routines, and the safety net of thinking everything must follow a certain pattern. They rely on logic because logic makes the world feel manageable. But chosen ones, you come from a different dimension of awareness. Your insight isn't rehearsed. Your perception doesn't need permission. Your clarity arrives unforced, uninvited, and unmistakably accurate. So when you said those words lightly, not even trying to make a statement, the truth behind them was already carrying momentum. It wasn't a prediction, it was recognition. You didn't create the reality, they were already walking into it. You simply saw the outline before they knew it existed. And that's what unsettles them most. They cannot trace the origin of your accuracy. They cannot follow the thread back to your thought process. They cannot understand how you saw what they couldn't. They want explanations that make sense to their limited frame of reference, yet what you possess is beyond their intellectual reach. It's not something they can analyze, dismantle, or rationalize. So they panic. They scramble. They attempt to make sense of something that isn't meant to be dissected by their level of thinking. You weren't accessing the world with the same tools they rely on. You were accessing truth through instinct, alignment, awareness, things that cannot be taught or borrowed or faked. My dear chosen ones, this is where your power becomes undeniable. You didn't need to raise your voice. You didn't need to explain yourself. You didn't need to prove anything. Your casual words, delivered without effort, carried a force that exposed their limits. It made them realize the enormous gap between your perception and theirs. And that gap terrifies them. Because once someone recognizes that another person sees what they can't, understands what they overlook, and anticipates what they deny, their illusion of control disintegrates. Your presence becomes unpredictable to them. Not because you're chaotic, but because your clarity doesn't follow their rules. They can't guess your next move. They can't predict your insight. They can't influence the place your words emerge from. And that is the real threat. Not the joke itself, not the accuracy alone, but the realization that you are operating from a mental and intuitive landscape they have no map for. Every time you speak now, even casually, they feel a chill, because they know that behind your light words is a depth they can't navigate, a truth they can't outrun. And chosen ones, let me remind you, this depth isn't something you perform for others. It isn't something you manipulate. It isn't something you use for show. It's simply who you are. Your awareness is natural, not theatrical. Your perception is organic, not constructed. And that authenticity is exactly why your words hit with such unfiltered force. When you speak from a place they can't reach, your truth becomes untouchable, unchallengeable, undeniable. They're losing their minds not because your joke came true, but because they finally understand why it did. Because now they see what they tried so hard not to notice. You were never thinking on their level to begin with. And that, my dear chosen ones, is a power they will never be able to touch. And as we close this chapter, my dear chosen ones, understand this. Their confusion was never your burden. It was the consequence of underestimating someone who was always steps ahead. When your truth becomes reality, the world rearranges itself around your clarity. If this message resonated with your journey, support the work that brings strength and insight to you by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and dropping 77 in the comments so I know you're walking this path with intention. Share this message with someone who needs to remember their power. More eye-opening truth is on the way.